Hey everyone, Michelle Seidling here with another episode of Food Experience Unplugged. Today we'll explore how self-care is the key to professional and personal success. Here to help us do that is self-care strategist Katie McDonald. Many of us view self-care as a time that would be better spent on getting things done, but self-care is actually key to professional and personal success. Katie McDonald learned the hard way. The process of mastering a high intensity career came at a huge cost, followed by the responsibilities of motherhood after leaving corporate life. Katie's chronic self neglect led her to the depths of overwhelm, depression, and illness. By creating the b.nourished program, Katie has curated proven practices from her personal recovery and decades of study into an executive wellness program that fosters mindfulness, peace of mind, and productivity. A professional keynote speaker and a dynamic self-care strategist with clients across the nation and abroad, Katie McDonald helps executives and entrepreneurs to get things done without becoming undone, while envisioning the best version of themselves. Please welcome Katie McDonald. This podcast is available on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. Please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to be informed as new episodes become available. If you enjoyed today's episode or any of our episodes, please rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. As always, check out our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com for some resources as you begin your health journey. Katie McDonald, welcome to Food Experience Unplugged.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is fantastic to have you as the self-care strategist. I can't wait to hear what that's all about. And the founder of b.nourished. But before we get started, will you introduce yourself a little bit and what brought you to this point in your life and career? Why self-care? Why b.nourished? Why have you chosen this as your area of emphasis?
Because I had to be my first client, really. I needed I needed an approach to well-being that wasn't superficial, that wasn't vacuous or disrespectful of my human needs. I lost my way. I was addicted to busyness. I didn't know how to take care of myself simply by virtue of respecting my energy, respecting my mindset, respecting my body. All I wanted to do was create more, produce more, do more. I was a human doing, and I didn't know how to become a human being. And so, as often the case is, our body and minds create illness and dis-ease in order for us to really take the elevator down out of our heads and inhabit our bodies again. And it took me a while to get the lesson. I had had symptoms and all sorts of distractions that really impeded my ability to step into the responsibility of being a human being and the maintenance that comes with it, that there is a body that requires care. I wouldn't drink water because I didn't want to have to go to the bathroom because I wanted to get more things done. So the addiction to productivity really denied my humanity. And it took getting sick, ulcerative colitis, pneumonia, shingles, asthma, allergies, anxiety, depression. I had to get that sick in a career that was so consuming that it denied me. And once I understood that I could not continue, I mean, it was out of choices. It was, I had to acquiesce, I had to step away, and I had to recover in order to move forward. And it took a while. I'd love to say I was a quick study, but I had to get increasingly sick until the stakes were very, very high.
Okay, so what was the tipping point where you decided, okay, I've got to get a handle on this somehow?
Well, there were so many signs that I just la 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 too busy. I loved the high that came from getting something done and having an impact and all those things, but I was coming undone in the process. This is going to sound silly, but really the wake up call for me is I missed a meeting, like completely forgot about it. And for someone who was perfectionistic and really like prided herself on being attentive and all buttoned up, missing a meeting, forgetting about the meeting completely, never even putting it in my calendar, just like completely obtuse. That was the wake up call for me. I realized that this delusion of my having it all together was crumbling at my feet. I couldn't play that game anymore. It was a lie. I knew it, and I was just too sick to continue. I had suicidal ideation, um, really, deep, deep depression, and it took a commitment to saying, I've got to quit this job. I went on antidepressants, and 2 weeks later, after I gave myself 5 months before I quit my job because I wasn't ready to let go of that identity, even in this desperate state. And I went on 2 weeks of antidepressants and emerged. Conceiving my child, my first child, my only child, after years of trying. Just the decision to leave my career created this space in my heart to allow for a baby.
Mm. Wow,
And I
that
still
is.
didn't get the point though. I still I just replaced the busyness in my career with the busyness of mom. Like I shifted, just translated that perfectionism into mommyhood, but now it was more noble. It was for a baby, my child. And then I got sick again. So it took me, like I said, it was not a straight path. It took me a while. This time there was a baby in the picture. He was almost 3. And I realized it's like, oh my gosh, I can't I can't do this to him. I can't leave him without a mom. And that was my next wake up call.
Mm. Okay. So it wasn't the actual career wasn't the issue. It's just trying to do too much and kind of load up your plate, so to speak, with obligations.
Literally and figuratively, yes, because simultaneously addicted to sugar and a binge eater and all those things that we do to stuff down a reality we're not ready to see or don't want to see. But yeah, it was a personality type. It was an approach to life. But certainly the career, I picked a career in sales, and when in sales, you're never done. You've never done enough. And I was a girl who didn't feel like I was enough, so I tried to do enough, do too
Mm.
much, really.
Wow. Yes. Now, how supportive was your family in terms of making that transition to kind of, I guess, downshift a little bit?
Well, I married a psychiatrist. I'm very hopeful.
So he
I didn't
knew.
usually call him into duty, but when I got sick, of course, having a doctor as a husband, super helpful. And he helped me understand how much I was struggling and how important it was for me to step away. So I was in a very, very deep depression, and I just gave up because I realized there's no way out. Like if you have this fantasy that you're going to reach this land of done, right? And no matter what you do, all of a sudden I had the epiphany of like, I'll never get there. And that was my entire life purpose. It's like, just do one more thing and then you'll be done, right? Just wake up early and then you can get it done and then you'll be done. I mean, it was fantasy. And I see it was just on a call with a client this morning who was saying just mimicking exactly the way that I used to talk to myself. Just this chronic need to serve, to underperform for myself and overfunction for everybody else. It's a cultural compulsion, biologically driven in a lot of ways for women in particular, and although not exclusive to women, but definitely far more common with women. And we're trying to earn our place in the world and serve. And what we're doing is undermining our own well being and longevity.
Mm. Okay, so you're finding it's pretty prevalent, maybe not necessarily just women, but just in general that drivenness, that career wanting career success, or where exactly does that come from? You
Yeah,
mentioned
so
a.
well, it's the high achieving woman in particular, tends to leans on the perfectionism. She has incredibly high standards for herself in the ways that she gives to the world. I mean, it's like somebody in need is almost like a red cape to a bull in heat. Just this like yes, it's earning that place, and what happens is with these super high expectations of themselves in the way that they give, and then they're running on fumes and yet they're accepting a high level of mediocrity when it comes to their own care. They might wake up every morning and be like, okay, like today's the day I'm going to work out. Today's the day I'm going to stretch and I'm going to make a green smoothie and have all these, like this picture of, and we're told constantly what we're supposed to be doing. We all know the basics. We're supposed to exercise and, eat leafy greens and drink water. I mean, this is all, basics in care, right? But there's so many other layers to it of perfectionism that are just debilitating and paralyzing. So we have to get real with ourselves and make sure that our expectations of ourselves are humane.
Mm. Okay. So with the clients you work with, are they basically at that breaking point, or is it more, they're on the road, if they keep going the way they're going, they're going to have problems?
Often they have not come as they didn't fall apart like I did. I mean, I had nobody to turn to. I didn't even have the language. It was just what I did, what I had always done. And when I looked around, everybody else seemed to be doing the same thing, really just trying to, make their way in the world. And to do it by, for me, the only lever I had was working harder. Like that was, there were lots of others, I didn't know how to access them. So the typical person that comes to be nourished is looking to be nourished. And again, they may not have the vocabulary. What they'll say is, I'm overwhelmed. And that's always like, ding, ding, ding. Be nourished is a remedy for overwhelm, right? The other thing, when I know that somebody is, has come to the right place, is they feel off. Like there's this sense, much like I shared with you, like I can't do it anymore. Like I don't have the energy. So the majority of the people that make their way to be nourished, they're approaching 40, or on the other side of 40, because they borrowed future energy. Every time they needed to just roll up their sleeves again when they didn't have it, they borrowed energy from their future. And now it's like the credit card bill came due. Here you go. And they don't have it in them. And that's when it's like, wow, I can't keep doing this. I've got to find a new way. They don't know the how, they know the what.
Okay. So is it more, it's more like a, I don't know, like a carrot and stick type of thing where they're, if I just finish this one more project, then I'll be okay. I can rest or something like that. Are they driven by that one last thing?
I think high achievers love to get things done. I mean, that's like, and love to have an impact. And the tricky part is they're highly capable, right? Which makes it even like it's just easier to do it yourself because you're smart and you're capable and you're agile and creative and resourceful. But if our only criteria for what we say yes to is what we can do, what we have the ability to do, the skill to do, then we're screwed. What we need to do is have filters. So they have big aspirations, they have so much to give, but they lack the filters because every
Mm,
yes is a no. They know how to say no to themselves, but they don't know how to say no to that extra board request. Oh, could you lead that committee? Could you be on this board? People see them as so capable because they are. But when you look under the hood, what you realize is they're exhausted. They're resentful. They're depleted. And they're also coming home and managing their family lives. Like
mm,
they're running on fumes, but they're serving a feast all day long. They're nibbling on crumbs or they're binging, right? In a
mm.
reaction to the starvation for peace of mind, the true hunger for spaciousness and abundance in their thinking and their lives.
Okay. Wow. They're overwhelmed to say the least. Oh, now where does self-care come into this? Now, what specifically is your area of focus within self-care? I know it's a very wide, a broad topic, but what specifically do you mean by that, and how does that help in this situation?
Yeah, well, one of the first things that we do I have a wheel that you can actually identify, like rate yourself 0 to 10, sleep, fun, relationships, money, nutrition, exercise, career. So, like all our home lives, like all of these pieces, I'm like, look, let's just take a minute. Let's pause for a minute and let's self assess, right? Scale 1 to
Mm.
10, connect the dots. And what we see is this like amoeba, like these weird, funky, career is usually pretty good. But then the other areas are like 1, 2, nutrition 2. Why? Because the only criteria for nutrition is convenience. Can I shovel it in my pie hole on the way to, whatever else I'm going to be doing? So it's all about the convenience and the speed and service to everything else, often with the nutrition, or periods of overeating, or not eating. It can be either, in an attempt to just keep going. So the first thing is like, where are we? How is your sleep? We're looking at habits that many of us formed in high school and we haven't even questioned, right? We haven't looked back. We're not slowing our lives down to just say, hey, I wonder, have I really thought about what my food's like right now? If we don't look at these things, we can't change what we're not tracking. We can't change what we're not observing. And the observation needs to come with compassion and curiosity. And self care requires a curiosity. Self care requires that when we gain this insight about where we are, we don't weaponize it against ourselves,
Mm.
so that we can't change. Or maybe we have. A lot of us have changed by bullying ourselves. There's something wrong with me. I'm going to fix it, just like any other problem I would in my business. I'm going to fix this problem, and the problem is me. And what we need to learn is like, hey, how about we just get curious that the one permanent relationship we have in our lives is the one we have with ourselves, right? Like
Mm.
that's it,
Good
till
point.
death do us part. And yet it's the relationship that we neglect the most. So this is a call to action. This is a battle cry to say, hey, you know what? Wake up. Wake up, be curious about yourself, be kind. Instead of being obsessed with other people's lives or even just remotely curious about the lives of strangers on social media, ask yourself some questions. And
Mm,
then that self-care is self-awareness. And once we understand what we need and what we're feeling and what it is that we're truly hungry for, then our responsibility is to actually fulfill those needs without judgment, without shame, but with deep respect for who we are as human beings, not just human doings.
good point. Now, within that realm of self care, you've got kind of an assessment type of thing, assessing your areas. But do you find that most people who come to you are, all but the career and everything else, or are they trying to do or trying to implement some of these self care strategies?
Well, I mean, they're high achievers, right? So everybody knows, again, what we're supposed to do. And sometimes they're doing some of these things. They might be, working out like crazy, but neglecting the nutrition, right? It's not
Mm,
like they don't like it. I'd love to say I have all the answers to what you need to do to be like completely. The bottom line is we all know those answers. The problem is we're not doing them. So we're living this life and then we have
mhm,
this, future life we want to live and we got to close the gap. And the way we close the gap is through strategies. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist. So like I don't care about what you did yesterday. I care about what you're doing right now. What are your habits and are they serving you? Right?
mm,
And what are you eating? What are you serving yourself and is it serving you? I want to dig around and we choose again. Or we double down and recommit to a choice we've already made, but we're struggling to learn how. It's about habits and it's about mindset. It's what we eat, what we think, what we say, what we do. All of those
mm,
things are how we can transform our lives. But we have to leave the shame aside. We have to leave all those other things aside and simply replace it with genuine curiosity about our own potential. How might I do this differently? Right?
absolutely. Now, do you find that um, for many people it takes quitting their jobs, such as what you did, or scaling down or something, or are they just actively being, staying where they are and just adding on or implementing different self-care
My
strategies?
first goal is to always figure out, can we make this work? Unless they come to me and they're like, I am done. I'm like, okay. But my goal is to say, can we work within what you've got right now? That when you wake up to what you need and we start redesigning your day, crafting strategies and routines and rituals that actually support you, I found a number of people love their work. It wasn't the work that they were struggling with, it was themselves. They didn't know how to establish boundaries. They were little pencil lines that everybody else could erase. But in
Mm.
working with me, it's like they become Sharpie lines until we need to study them again. So it's like they all of a sudden know who they are. They know what they're worth. It's fascinating. So I also have the other scenario where once we get to that point and they're just like they feel great. They're thinking clearly, right? We've gotten them out of the food fog. They're thinking clearly. They have creativity and resiliency. They're feeling passionate for their lives because they're moving their bodies and they're challenging their minds in these beautiful ways. They're slowing down. I'm teaching them mindfulness. They're slowing their roll. They have all these tools that were always there. They were just buried in busyness, buried in sugar, buried in too muchness, be it on the
Mm.
plate, on the calendar, in their mind. And what happens is, in this case, I have just this morning talking to a client who has her own firm, just multiple locations, multi-million-dollar company, and she's now going to work at 11 a.m. She was there at 7 a.m. and staying till 7 p.m. And she's like, well, it's just what I do. I'm like, but you're here because it's not working. Like, nobody comes to me because they're like, my life is great. Like, no, you come to me when you're like, I don't like this life that I've created. So we just said
Mhm.
for the next 2 weeks, let's just see, like, if you like the most indulgent time you could ever do, like, what time would you show up that would enable you to have the morning routine you wanted, the whole, like, the life you wanted? What would that look like? And she's like, I like 11 o'clock, but I couldn't do that. I'm like, for the next 2 weeks, you can do that. And you are doing that. And what she discovered, and she leaves at 5. And like we set up all
Mhm.
sorts of systems. So she's out, her assistant knows like everything. We communicate it, we go public. This is your schedule. And everybody, she most importantly respects it. But the relief is in 2 weeks, I can go right back, right? So I give
Mhm.
it a 2 week window. Monday through Friday, the next 2 weeks is what we're doing. And then you're going to study yourself. What works? What doesn't work? What do you like? What did you discover? What did you learn about yourself? Right. And
Mm.
she loves it. She loves it. And I asked her, her biggest fear in doing that task was she wasn't going to be productive. She is more productive than she ever was, like mind
Mm.
blowingly more productive. And she
Wow.
is happier. And she's attracting better employees to her company now because it's a better workplace because she's not resentful and exhausted. So we think self-care is selfish, but it's actually the opposite. That when we don't bring the fullest version of ourselves, when we're not fully nourished, we're bringing a compromised version of ourselves and we're leaving a swath of destruction behind us, let alone not bringing the full beauty of what's capable within us in a world, frankly, that so needs us. Like, hello, pandemic. Like, I mean, if there's ever a time where we've got to rise and be triumphant and stand in our full power of all our potential, it's now. So self neglect is selfish.
Good point. As many people ignore the self-care, just keep going on the road, I don't know, the path to destruction, so to
Mhm.
speak. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Now, with all of that, okay, you mentioned, okay, the 11 o'clock, the really taking stock
Mhm.
in what works. Now, do you find that that downtime, so it's basically not necessarily just the, hey, I'm taking 2 weeks off or 2 weeks, but you're refocusing your efforts into yourself that is really making the difference rather than saying just taking a 2 week vacation somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, really what we're doing is saying, okay, these habits, like the exercising every day, non-negotiable. Meditation and mindful quiet time, non-negotiable. Eating your meals, non-negotiable. Like all these things, we figure out what that, drinking our water, like we figure out the non-negotiables and they're common to everybody, but everyone has its own tweak. Like I need to go to bed early. You don't want to see me at 10 p.m. I'll be up to no good. I'll be miserable. I'll say things I don't want to say. I'll do things I don't want to do. Like I need to go to bed. When we study ourselves, not with self-absorption, but so that we can serve, right, in a sustainable way, so that we can be the fullest expression of ourselves. Um, we might not like what we hear. Like she didn't want to know that 11 a.m. was the right time for. Like she wanted to be that maverick that was there. It's like, oh, this is the right time. The fact is, once you learn who you are, you've got to do everything that you can to be able to honor that. Or else our body and mind is getting a very mixed message. You've done this work, you've discovered what works for you, and then you don't do it. What does that tell you? You're not worth the transformation. You're not worth living in alignment. So we have to change that. And in the case of, when we always end up I'll experiment. It's like, okay, we're going to reduce the hours. And what they discover without fail is they have no idea what to do with all their personal time. And that's
Mm,
part of it. They've never explored that. And even the weekends are spent kind of preparing for the next week, right?
mhm,
Or they're spent like in service to, all the family obligations that, the in-laws they're not seeing during the week because of their career and, taking care of the kids and like all this stuff, so there's this huge gaping hole of like, what do I even love to do beyond my work? And for many of us, I love my work. I have to contain myself because I can easily get lost in it. I am in a daily practice of recalibrating what is enough.
okay. So in terms of your own situation, what is your day look like? How are you different in terms of self-care, in terms of managing that whole workaholic syndrome versus
Yes.
where you were several years ago?
Well, several years ago, I mean, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, anxious and stressed about something I might have missed, something I forgot to do, like this vigilance, this like painful vigilance. And again, when you're in sales, you're never done. So there's always one more call you could make, not to mention all the personal stuff that I was neglecting, which, you don't get
Mm,
your oil changed and all of a sudden you're stranded on the side of the road. I mean,
mhm,
I wasn't maintaining anything except
mm,
my career. So I reinvent that strategy and cadence every 90 days. So I created a planner based on my b.nourished methodology because every 90 days, we've got to take the context into considerations. Like 12 weeks is our ability we can stay focused for that long. So instead of writing these annual goals, what is it in these 12 weeks, what is it that I want to accomplish? What skills do I need to develop? Who do I need to become in order to fulfill that future version of myself? And so,
mm,
this is summer mode, so it's a little different for me. But I get up at 5. That's how I roll. I love the morning time. I don't want to talk to anybody. I used to see clients at 9 o'clock. I don't see clients at 9 o'clock anymore. My first client is at 10 because I love that more. I meditate. I have a cup of green tea. I have my supplements, and I go for either a walk or a run or a workout for an hour, and then I have my smoothie. Then I lift weights. And prior to that, I skipped a step, which is I sit with my planner and say, okay, what are the 3 things I'm going to accomplish today? Why? Because 3 is enough. And that changes, right? I mean, one of my three things is today being here with you, the preparation and being mindful so that I could contribute skillfully to our conversation. But that's one of those three things. I hold myself accountable to those three things. And then I have a little spot for other little niggly things like pay a bill, do this, do that. It's okay. But those three things, that's how I know I've been successful. That's how I know when I have done enough. And then I get to work. So I write some, I'll shower, get dressed, and then I start writing content. I'm creating a coaching process that's or a coaching program that's going to be in the start of the new year, and that will be all online. So I'm creating the content for that. I'm writing speeches because I do presentations all over as a keynote presenter. So I'm creating content. I'm writing blogs. Like, it's just my creative time. And I found that when I did it at the end of the day, forget it. Like, doesn't happen. So I see clients, I do networking, I'm talking to people who want to hire me as speaking, and then I shut it down typically by 3 p.m. I'm done. I do
Mm,
have lunch and I work from home. So I was just today at lunch having a big salad, sitting outside with the breezes off the water, heaven,
mhm,
right? But I would have never done that before. And I didn't
mm,
have to do something with it. I didn't have my planner, I didn't have a paper. I just ate my lunch. And it became another opportunity to recalibrate, to check in, be like, hey, how you doing? How am I doing on those three things? Right. And then after that, it's like I go for another walk just because I need to move my body. And I just want to think. I listen to a book on tape. I love learning, make dinner, and, and then I shut it down. I'll watch a show with my husband, cuddle with my son who's in college, but he's home right now. And I go to bed early, take a bubble bath, go to bed. So
mm,
it's, and of course, sometimes that changes. I'll go out, I'll do some, but the bottom line is those things are happening, but they're happening with respect for who I am and what I
mm,
need. And I'm not going to try to make myself a night owl. I mean, I want to be in flow. I don't want to be swimming upstream. I don't want to go against the current. And as I was, the same client, as I was speaking with earlier, was like, okay, we need a fall plan. What's your fall plan? I know what your summer plan is, but we need to start thinking about, because for her, that the long hours are nourishing. And all of a sudden
mm,
knowing that, like, what's the context and considerations for the fall? What do we have to think about? Like, are your kids going back to school? Do you have, certain things at your work that are going to be more distracting? Is there more yard work? Like, what is it about this season that we need to take into consideration and then adjust our expectations of ourselves?
mm. Okay. So it's not necessarily a question of you getting more stuff done. It's maybe getting stuff done differently.
Yes, like, how do I get stuff done and not come undone, right?
Mhm,
How do I, and most importantly, being intentional about what it is we want to do. Most people are asleep. They're just going through the motions. They're reacting to whatever people are asking of them. If they don't have an agenda, they let everybody else dictate theirs. And they
mm,
wonder why they feel like a doormat. They wonder why they're binging on chips, at 7 p.m. in rage, right? That's why. They've lost themselves. They've forgotten themselves. What we need to do is say, look, let's bring in some agency here. You are 100% responsible for your life. So, what do you want to do, as Mary Oliver says, with this one precious life?
mm. Okay. So just how do you feel in terms of your own transformation, your own life? How do you feel in terms of your your productivity, your ability to give, as we are such givers, for in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's an occupational hazard when you're in, as you are, you're in a career that is in service, right, and giving. It means we have to actually do a better job of fortifying ourselves with our own, systems and strategies and self-care techniques. So I feel good right now because we're in the process of moving. So that's part of my context and considerations when I was looking at, okay, 90 days. These next 90 days, what's that going to look like? Oh, you're going to be moving out of a house that you've lived in for 12 years, considerably smaller, and you're downsizing it into a loft. And it's like,
Mhm,
okay, that's a Herculean effort. Launching my son in college, like getting him situated during COVID in his freshman year of college in New York City. Okay,
mhm.
like I'm taking all these things into consideration and saying, what's reasonable? So I'm enrolled in a professional speaking course that I just graduated from. And it was super
Congratulations.
intense. Thank you. Super intense. And loved it. And it was the right thing and it was everything. But what I did is I didn't follow the pace that they said. It's like, okay, here's a new week, here's a new module. And I was like, you know what? I've got to do it at my pace because I can't do it this way. And I'm an A student. I like being on time, all that stuff. I had to learn flow. I had to learn
Mhm,
again after all of these years, all this study of saying, wow, you're not going to do it the way you've always done it. You're going to have to change the way you do it or choose to not do it. And I was like, okay,
Mm,
I want to do this. So I've got to do it in a new way. And what happened was instead of feeling pressure, I feel joy. I have so much more creativity. I'm tweaking the presentation, having fun. It's more creative, it's more inventive. And while I was trying to force it, I couldn't access that wisdom. It was just
mm.
harder. Once I surrendered, it's so much easier and I'm having fun with it.
Oh, wow. It's just, it must be refreshing to just thinking of your own journey, your own transformation to finally be at a point where you're not feeling stressed all the time. You're feeling more in control of the situation.
I am. Well, we need to gain self mastery, right? And I'm not talking perfectionism. It's like we've got to master ourselves, and most of us aren't. And so as a result, we just feel so out of control, and everything gets out of control. Our eating, our words, our watching TV, our shopping, whatever it is, it's just out of control because we haven't practices in place that really are intentional around ourselves, our I mean, through so many people are struggling with drinking. So much like I talked about reducing those hours, my clients like, okay, for the next 2 weeks, we're going off alcohol. Why?
Mhm,
Because I want you to question these habits that you just do. Do you like the role that it's playing in your life? Do you like that version of you? Do you like how it influences you? And the answer a lot of times is, I love alcohol. I like to have it. But what was 3 or 4 glasses is now one. And they enjoy it and they put it in a beautiful glass and they bring ritual and reverence to something that's not fundamentally good for you.
mhm.
Right? I'm
Sure.
not about deprivation because if you deprive me as a recovering food addict, you deprive me. It's like, forget it. I'm going to go even harder. Right?
Mm,
So it's got to be in a different mindset. We've got to change the way we change.
I like that. Change the way we change. So just kind of refocusing your mindset, so to speak.
Yes, yes. And our
Mm,
habits, most importantly, because the mindset's huge, and that's a huge part of the work and be nourished. But the bottom line is, it matters about what we do. Like we could have the greatest mindset, but if we're not implementing, it's just blah blah blah. So
mhm.
implementation is everything, but it's got to be paired with the right mindset. We need to reframe whatever's not working for us and make it work for us.
Okay, sure. Now, where for those who are just getting started, whether they're at that tipping point or getting close to it, or they're just looking for how do I implement all this self-care stuff?
Yeah.
What things would you recommend? Where do they start in this whole journey?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's so easy to get overwhelmed to be like, oh my God, I've got to do everything, do anything, right? I totally get that. So I appreciate that question. Number one is just take a minute and just say, like, how am I doing? If there's one thing I could change about my habits right now that could make, like, if I could get good sleep, I would feel so much better. Like, what is that? We can usually find one, like, blah, blah, this one is the glaring, this is the fire. Then we need to find that one thing and then just one simple step. So if sleep is a challenge, we're going to bed at midnight, waking up exhausted. It's like, okay, I'm going to, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to train myself to go to bed at 10 o'clock. And then I'm going to ask myself, do I like this version of me better? Do I find that I'm waking up earlier and going for a walk? And before what
Mm,
was like, oh, I should go for a walk is now like, oh, I'm going to go for a walk because I now have the spaciousness and time. And then we get to decide, give yourself an out. The other main thing in order to even ask that question is to slow our roll enough. So I would encourage someone to start with a cup of tea. A cup of tea can be the beginning of a mindfulness practice. I would encourage you to just from the moment you're boiling water, don't do a microwave. I want like boil water, get some nice herbal tea if you'd like. And from the moment that water boils till you pour it in the cup and you take your last sip, you can be in silence and just let your senses wake up, right? You're hearing the water boiling, you're hearing it whistle, right? You can smell the tea, you're going to taste the tea, you're touching the warm mug, right? It's all of this that gets us back in our bodies and that wisdom that we already have that we're trying to outrun somehow. It's already there. We need to excavate it. And the way we do is to slow our roll.
mm. Okay, so just slow down, take stock of what we're doing in implementing. I like that. Just implementing even just that one little thing to get.
One little thing. The little thing needs to be something that you can do on a consistent basis because consistency is the muscle we're not utilizing.
Mm,
Consistency is what we got to work every single day. So pick the smallest thing that you're going to do every day, right? And it's usually something that you're going to blow off and be like, "Oh my God, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to like. Why would I do that?" And I have another client and working out hour and a half every day and then got injured And
Mm,
so she was like, so what? She had to recover from the injury. And then she did nothing because she knew she couldn't go back to working out an hour and a half every day. And I was like, well, here's a concept. I want you to walk around your block for 15 minutes every day. Oh my God, that's ridiculous.
mm.
That's, and I'm like, well, you're doing nothing, right? Like right now,
Mm,
because it can't be perfect, you're doing nothing. So 15 minutes and do it consistently and then celebrate the heck out of the fact that you just did something for 15 minutes. Like give yourself a
mm.
pat on the back, like whoop whoop, whatever you got to do. Feel super proud of yourself for doing something that you didn't want to do, but you did in service to your future self.
Mm, okay. So don't necessarily focus on, oh, okay, I've got to run and then I get injured, or I've got to do this one thing, but just have it be a little more flexible than being committed. Okay, I've got to just do this one thing and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, there is no flexibility when it comes to that habit. Like that's a not like I want you to have zero flexibility about whatever habit small habit you have. Just say, I'm going to do it for 2 weeks. I'm going to do it every day. Why? Because
Mhm,
then we learn how to do something we don't want to do, but we need to do because it's good for us, right?
mhm,
So that's really important. Like if you're not flossing, floss, and that's your one thing, floss. And just floss once a day if that's what you need to do, or one tooth if that's what you need to do just to get started, right? But yes, it's that. So no flexibility on that front. But the flexibility comes when we say, okay, how might I make this habit that is daunting that I keep telling myself I'm going to do and never do? And how do I
mhm,
make it digestible? How do I make it so it's a daily habit done consistently? And that's how we get the results. I mean, it's so funny. My clients be like, it's almost they don't it's imperceivable. They don't understand how far they've come because I have
mm,
to show them that wheel that they did where they had all the indents and all the low numbers in their self-care. They don't believe me because it was these small subtle incremental changes that 6 months later it's like my life's completely unrecognizable. Or 90 days later. 12 weeks is a powerful time frame and it aligns with our biology and our ability to be able to stay focused. I mean, forget, New Year's resolutions. I mean, by, January 20th, it's like, huh, what
mhm,
am I going to do? So instead, just say for the next 90 days, this is, these three things I'm going to commit to. And then what does that
mhm,
look like on a weekly basis? What does it look like on a daily basis? Right?
mm. Okay. Now, how does that translate into the way they're perceived, whether at work or with their home life, in terms of that transformation toward self care? Does that make sense?
Well, if you have been a martyr, and then all of a sudden untie your superhero cape and realize you're the one that needs rescuing, right? No one is going to like it. And that's how you know you're on the right path. Piss everybody off because they're used to you denying your own needs. And the
Mm,
fact is, in order for us to transform ourselves, we've got to understand we're going to inconvenience other people with our needs.
okay.
Wham, right? And what we do is liberate everybody else to do the same. Glennon Doyle, an activist and author of Untamed, says that there is no such thing as one-way liberation. And I think that
Mm,
is so true that when you have the courage to take back your power and to on a day-to-day basis show up for yourself the way you show up for everybody else, you are giving everybody else the permission that they had at birth, but we forget the birthright of self-care. And so if you don't get pushback, that tells me when my clients are like, oh, my family's blah, 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 that's like, alert, alert, you are playing small. We got to go
mm.
farther. We got to push this farther. And it
Yeah.
doesn't make you selfish. I mean, that's the fear, right? Martyr, selfish. Like, I want you to go way, it's going to feel like you are the most self absorbed, selfish monster. And that's how I know you've moved a quarter of an inch from martyr. That's it. So keep going in that direction, keep moving in that direction. Then I'm like, yeah, now we're onto it. And they learn I can survive the guilt
Mm,
because I
okay.
understand, like, I'm not snarking at my husband, I'm not screaming at my kids, I'm not binging all day, I'm like, I'm actually a better person. I like myself better, and my family actually likes me better.
Because they're taking time out for them, for
Yes.
themselves.
I mean, I think so many women are furious and resentful. And then we as women are taught not to be angry, which is a bit tricky, because we
Mhm.
are. But we
Definitely.
are, we are the knight in shining armor we've been waiting for. We are the only ones that can do this work. And doing so, we are role modeling to your kids. Like, if you think self care is selfish, like, again, let's challenge that and say, how selfish of you to teach your kids, especially if you have daughters, to say to be a mother is to be invisible, is to not
Mm,
have needs, to deny yourself. Like, I don't want that for my child. I don't want my son to think that that's what he's going to get. I want him to pick a woman who's going to at least value herself enough, not accept the patriarchal messages of self neglect and the importance of being peacekeepers, even though we're at war with ourselves.
Mm. So so in general, you could become a more I don't know, more fulfilled, more a better teacher to or a better example to at work or with your family or
Absolutely.
elsewhere.
We owe it to the next generation to say, like, I can take care of business and take care of myself.
Mm. Okay, excellent point. Wow, I love that. Just having that balance, just infusing self care actually makes you better at work or with
It's
your
a
family.
strategy.
Or,
Like, if you're not using self care to be better at work, then you are being left in the dust. That person, and look around, the people that take care of themselves often are more successful in their work. But um, do a test. Say, okay, for the next 90 days, I'm going to lean into this self care thing. I'm just going to walk 15 minutes a day. I'm going to add some leafy greens. I might reduce my alcohol. And like, how much more can I get done? How much more effective am I? The people that are actually learning to use those self care tools to give them more energy, mental clarity, stamina, they're catapulting way ahead. It is a tool that we are underutilizing, but boy, what a shame because it is a great strategy for being more impactful and leaving a legacy of which you're proud.
absolutely. Excellent point. So, Katie, how can people get in contact with you to start being nourished, so to speak?
Yes, thank you. I'd encourage them to go to my website. It's b.nourished, BNOURISHED. And when you sign up for my newsletter, what you're going to find is I'll send you called Be Overwhelmed. And then all sorts of resources. I will not bury you in your, with the newsletter because I want you in your life, not on the screen. But it's meant to be skillful resources to disrupt the way that you're thinking so that you can change the way you're living. And that is the
Mm,
most important way to do it. You can also go online and buy the planner, which is my Be Nourished methodology. It's a nice entryway into this, marrying self care and productivity together. And that's a way. There's a digital course to support it, so you're not left hanging. And I would really encourage you to if there's any part of this message that resonates with you, honor that. That's your wisdom, right? That's the inner authority saying, "Hey, you," and let's get to it before your body has to manifest disease to get your attention, or manifest mental challenges, or anything else. Like, we don't have to circle the drain. We can just
mm,
simply say, I want more."
excellent. Well, we will include all of those in the show notes. And Katie, it's been amazing. I love the story of your own journey and how you are making a difference in the lives of others as well. So, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for this opportunity. I really respect your work and appreciate the chance to speak to your audience.